I think it makes sense for them to send that out. It was perhaps a little overdue, but in that particular case, I wasn't super surprised. I am sure that there are other cases that they are tracking. Or let's just put it this way, I would be very surprised if this was like the only case that they're looking at, that they're tracking. There's been a change in how China is perceived on this. There is a change in policy, I do think, in the UK. We have seen some pretty dramatic changes in the public discourse on China from very much golden era years ago, where, the focus was on how can Britain benefit from global China, how can Britain get more investment from China, towards a discourse that is much more critical. And I think a lot of the reasons for this are actually what's been happening in China, continued domestic repression in China. I do think that what's been happening in Hong Kong did play quite a bit of a role in Britain in turning the tide in the public against more benign cooperation rhetoric. I think it's been a bit of an eye-opener to a lot of people to see basically the Chinese government doing what it did in Hong Kong with the national security law, basically seeing the Chinese government, the Sino-British joint declaration has no value anymore. I do think that's changed quite a bit of how the UK has been looking at China, and also how the British government has started to publicly communicate about this. So again, there's no singular reason for why now, but it does fit the overall changes in the UK, which have been quite substantial. Not necessarily. I think some of the United Front work that we've seen in third countries goes through Hong Kong. Like some networks, even some foundations, some groups are registered in Hong Kong. One, because I think Hong Kong has been a target of United Front work itself. So the party has long worked with supposedly private companies, private individuals, private foundations registered in Hong Kong to organize United Front work. Like that is, I think, why sometimes you have a Hong Kong link. It can go through anyone, but yeah, in some cases it because of this established link. The United Front work in Hong Kong has a history, is pretty well established, much more so than in many other countries. In my experience, the line between naivete and naivete that pays off tends to be very thin. Oftentimes, it pays to be naive. You gain more when you decide not to investigate certain things and not to look at, what are the larger political goals that can be incredibly profitable in terms of getting investment, in terms of personal profit, in terms of many other ways. That tends to be how I look at that. I think people are more aware of the general phenomenon, of the problem, and some will to start fixing it. Current events that would include stuff like COVID, like Huawei, of having seen kind of the harder side of the party state during the pandemic. The part of it really is developments that have been ongoing. But the other part, honestly, is like hard work. There's like a bunch of us that have been screaming about this for a really long time. When people are becoming more aware, that's usually not something that comes from nothing. This is